The excavator's engine roared to life, its metal arm rising like a giant hand preparing to erase a lifetime. Victor Hale stood motionless in his tailored navy suit, his polished shoes sinking slightly into the cracked pavement he once ran across barefoot as a child. The house in front of him looked smaller than he remembered, its faded blue paint peeling under the harsh daylight, its windows tired and hollow. It no longer belonged in this world of towering glass apartments and shining steel. It looked fragile, forgotten, disposable, just like Victor had once felt inside its walls. Before this story continues, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the invisible threads that connect us across time, take a moment to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who believes in hope, and subscribe to Midnight Tales, where stories remind us what truly matters. Victor inhaled deeply, the air thick with dust and memories. This house had once been everything. It had held laughter, arguments, scraped knees, and sleepless nights filled with dreams too big for its small rooms. It had also held silence. The kind of silence that settles after loss. His mother had died in the back bedroom when he was only 11, her gentle voice replaced forever by the hollow ticking of a clock. His father, broken by grief, became distant, cold, and eventually gone too. By 17, Victor had walked out of that house with a single bag and a heart full of quiet promises. He had promised himself he would never be weak again. He would never be poor again. He would never need anything from anyone again. And he had kept that promise. Now, at 47, Victor was a millionaire. His name appeared in business magazines, his face recognized in glass reflections of skyscrapers he owned. He had built an empire of real estate, buying broken places and turning them into profit. This house was supposed to be just another transaction. Another useless relic cleared to make space for something stronger. Something better. He raised his hand slightly, signaling the operator to prepare. But then he saw them. Standing in front of the house were two elderly figures. A thin woman with silver hair pulled back into a loose knot, and beside her, a frail man whose shoulders sagged under invisible weight. They looked out of place, like ghosts refusing to leave. They stood quietly, holding hands, their faces calm but tired, their eyes locked on Victor with a mixture of fear and quiet dignity. Victor frowned. No one had mentioned occupants. He had purchased the property legally. It had been listed as abandoned. Yet they stood there. Something about them stirred an old, uncomfortable feeling deep in his chest. The woman's dress fluttered gently in the warm daytime breeze, and Victor noticed her eyes. They were not angry. They were not accusing. They were simply sad. The kind of sadness that did not beg for sympathy but carried acceptance. Victor stepped closer, his heartbeat slower now, heavier. As he approached, the man shifted slightly, placing himself protectively beside the woman. They looked small, fragile, human. Victor's mind began searching for answers. Had they broken in? Were they trespassing? Or had his team made a mistake? But before logic could shield him, memory struck without warning. He remembered being 13 years old, sitting on the front steps of this house, hungry and alone. His father had disappeared for days. The refrigerator had been empty. The world had felt cold and uncaring. And then a gentle knock had come at the door. It had been their neighbors. A quiet elderly couple. They had brought him warm food. Soup and bread. They had not asked questions. They had not demanded gratitude. They had simply cared. Victor's chest tightened as realization crept slowly into his mind. The silver-haired woman standing before him, her eyes were familiar. Not from business, from kindness. Her name rose into his thoughts like sunlight breaking through clouds. Marion. And beside her, Thomas. They had lived next door. They had been invisible to the world, but they had seen him when no one else had. Victor's throat went dry. He remembered how Marion had once wrapped a blanket around his shoulders when he fell asleep on their porch. He remembered Thomas fixing his broken bicycle without asking for anything in return. They had never spoken much, but their actions had filled the silence of his loneliness. And now they stood here, older, smaller, but still together. Victor realized something else. Their house next door was gone. Replaced by one of his luxury developments years ago. They had nowhere else to go. So they had returned here. To his house. The excavator behind them suddenly looked monstrous, its metal teeth ready to devour not wood, but history. Victor felt something unfamiliar rising inside him. Not weakness, not regret, something deeper, humanity. For years, he had believed strength meant erasing the past, destroying anything fragile, building only what made him richer, safer, untouchable. But these two people had once protected him when he was fragile. They had seen a scared boy and offered him warmth. And now he stood as a powerful man, about to erase the last place that still held their memories. Victor lowered his hand slowly. The excavator engine fell silent. The sudden quiet felt louder than the machine ever had. Victor looked at them, really looked at them, and saw not obstacles but reminders. Reminders that success built without kindness was empty. Reminders that the strongest foundations were not made of steel, but of compassion. For the first time in decades, Victor saw his childhood home not as a symbol of weakness, but as a witness. A witness to survival, to pain, to kindness given without expectation. And he realized something that no amount of money had ever taught him. He had not escaped that house. That house had built him. Victor turned away from the excavator and walked toward Marion and Thomas, his expensive shoes suddenly feeling unimportant against the cracked earth. He did not know exactly what he would say, or how he would repair what had already been broken. But he knew one thing. He would not destroy this place. Not today, not ever. Because sometimes, the past does not exist to trap us. Sometimes, it exists to remind us who saved us when we could not save ourselves. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who still believes in quiet kindness, and subscribe to Midnight Tales, where forgotten stories find their voice again. Special request. Comment, kindness builds forever, if you believe one small act of compassion can change a life. Victor Hale arrived that morning as a millionaire ready to erase his past. But he left as something far more rare. He left as a man who finally remembered his soul.